In order to work with thinking, we need two things, we could say. The first thing is to understand very clearly what this phenomenon, which we might call runaway thinking, is all about. So we have thinking, which is a thinking for a purpose or for a pragmatic reason, which is like using a drill to drill a hole in a wall. So we drill it and then we turn the drill off. Then we have runaway thinking, which is like when we don't turn the drill off and it's just drilling away. And very, very rarely is it the case that we have thinking that works to order, so to speak. Most thinking is runaway thinking. So if we look at thinking that happens to order, it's very, very easy to explain what it's all about. I've got a problem and I use the thinking to solve the problem if I can. Very simple. Runaway thinking takes a bit more explaining. And as I was saying in the last installment, what runaway thinking is doing is trying to smooth out all the rough edges, all the corners in the universe, to smooth it all out so everything fits into the system that we are wanting to project on the world. So we can say that runaway thinking is thinking that wants to do away with the enigma. Now, at no point in the day do we stop and say to ourselves, I want to do away with the enigma because the enigma's bugging me or frightening me or giving me the heebie-jeebies or whatever. We don't say that. But that's the secret reason for all of our thinking when we're in runaway thinking mode. So the thinking's happening, all sorts of thoughts, a cascade of thoughts all day long. And ostensibly the thoughts are about particular things, particular questions, particular points of interest, whatever the hell it is. And it's wall-to-wall thinking, so as soon as one thought reaches its conclusion or we get tired of it, there's another thought. So it's like tiles that have been placed with no gaps between them. And the overall effect of all of these wall-to-wall thoughts is that we very effectively get rid of the enigma, as far as we're concerned. So when we're busy thinking away, thinking this and thinking that, the ostensible purpose for each thought is anything. It could be anything, could be this, could be that. But that doesn't matter at all because that's only just a cover story. It's just a blind. If we skip that and go straight to the meat of the matter and look what each thought is really saying, then we can say that every time we have a thought, what the thought is really saying is deny the enigma. So if you can imagine that instead of thinking whatever it is, we just think deny the enigma, deny the enigma. That's the mantra, deny the enigma. So every thought is really saying deny the enigma. And of course we can't say that because by saying it we let on to the fact that there is an enigma and the whole thing would explode in our faces and we'd mess up. So we don't. We think other thoughts. The thoughts could be anything. And they are anything. And it doesn't really matter how stupid they are because the real purpose is to get this eraser, and it's like we're trying to erase the enigma. And we do that our whole lives, which is an extraordinary thought. So I might be thinking all of these apparently pertinent thoughts. I might be thinking, do whips have snips? Do noops have snoops? do Wurzels have Furzels? And very seriously taking these thoughts very seriously. But what I'm really saying is deny the enigma, deny the enigma, deny the enigma. And I spend my whole life denying the enigma in this way. And because thought has run away, it's just working away at this over and over and over and over again, independently of us. So it's not really as if I'm guiding it or steering it. This is what thought's doing, all of its own accord. Because, as I was saying, thought has a big issue with the cosmic enigma or any kind of enigma. Thought's got an allergy to enigmas. And another element that we might mention is that it's impossible to deny the enigma in any effective or long-term way anyway. So just as with all denial, the frenziedness of the denial, the extravagant, over-the-top, fantastically repetitive nature of all denial, which is quite maddening, quite sickening, is due entirely to the fact that it's an impossible task we're trying to do. So we make up for the impossibility, we cover up for the impossibility by sheer volume or sheer repetition. So by bringing in infinite repetition, we're doing the very, very best that we can to deny the enigma. We're still not succeeding in the end run, but we're playing a very good delaying game. And we can see that it's a good delaying game because we can pick on any human being at random and walk up to them with a clipboard or something and we could say, well, I want to talk to you about the enigma. Have you any thoughts on it, or have you any reflections or anything you'd like to say about the enigma? And they'll look you in the eye and say, what do you want about? What enigma? What in the name of God are you talking about? I don't know any enigma. And you can pick on anyone, I'd say, and practically everyone would say that. Kids mightn't say it, but then they wouldn't articulate things in terms of the enigma anyway. They wouldn't articulate it anyway, really. They wouldn't need to. But it's a safe bet to say that when we're small, we don't run around denying the enigma from morning till night. Generally speaking, it's rare for kids to be like that. It's only when we get older and we get infected with thought, with the virus of the mind, which quickly spreads and spreads and spreads until it covers everything. And then all we're interested in is denying the enigma. And we'll claim, of course, to be interested in other things. I'll say, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that. Yes, this is something that I'm particularly fascinated with, or this is something that's important to me. But that's bullcrap. All I am interested in is denying the enigma when it gets down to it. And the reason I can say that emphatically is because we're all possessed by the runaway thinking mind, and that is the only agenda of the runaway thinking mind. That's why it's run away, because it's trying to do something that it can't do. It's freaking out and just going all out. So if you don't happen to be afflicted with the runaway thinking mind, you won't be trying to deny the enigma at every turn. As soon as you open your eyes, deny the enigma. deny the enigma. And as you doze off to sleep, deny the enigma, deny the enigma, like that. But very, very few of us are not possessed by the runaway thinking mind. It's not an easy thing to get free of the runaway thinking mind. It's a bit like we've rusted over. So when we start off in life, we're like brand new, you could say brand new, some kind of metal like steel, all shiny and fresh looking. But when we leave sheets of steel out in the open air, it doesn't take very long before they all turn rusty. And that rust's really hard to get rid of, and it spreads. And until the end, before very long, you're looking at a sheet of rust. And that's what we all are. We're rusted over with thought. And we don't like to hear that, but it doesn't make any difference. That is our situation. And if anyone were to doubt it, they just have to sit still for a while and watch what's going on in their heads. And you'd see all the rust. There'd be no shininess. It'd be all just dull rust, wall-to-wall rust, rusty thoughts. So that's useful to see, because it enables us not to be caught or snared by each thought that comes along, because each thought that comes along claims to be about something specific and something significant. And we always fall for that. It's like, oh yeah, oh okay, oh yeah. We bow down to the thoughts and we accept what they're telling us on the terms that they're telling us. So what we don't do is we don't see what's really happening, and we don't see every thought that comes along as being the mind saying, deny the enigma. And then another thought, deny the enigma, deny the enigma. If we did see that, we'd be on to thought's game and we'd be streets ahead of it. If only we could see that. Every time a thought came along, it'd be like, no way you're going to take that seriously. If a thought comes along and says, deny the enigma, you're not going to take it seriously. You're not going to fall for the trick. Now, okay, the thought doesn't announce itself in honest terms like that, but we know what it's really at. So all attempts to find order in the world, put everything in the nice, neat way that we want it to be, all our attempts to tidy up or find resolutions or to wrap everything up or analyze stuff so as to get to the real reason, all of this is denial of the enigma. So all of our thoughts are really, that's what they're trying to do. Now, when the runaway mind gets stretched too far, it starts to become obvious. It's trying too hard to deny the enigma, and we can see that something not right is happening here. So in the case of anxiety, I'm having anxious thoughts about lots of things. Now that doesn't mean that as soon as I notice that I'm anxious, I'm going to suss on to thought's game, because I'm not. Because I'm still taking thought's cover story very, very seriously. So seriously that I'm breaking out in a sweat. My heart is pounding. And that's because I'm taking the cover story. What these thoughts are doing, they're multiplying and multiplying and become more and more extreme in their claims on my attention. Because they are all trying to deny the enigma. But they're doing it in such a way that it's dysfunctional for me. I can't get through my day-to-day life because I'm too inundated with worries. So we can say that the underlying cause for this is that the thinking mind is panicking in a way. It's going all out. So it's like as if you're driving and you're slamming the accelerator right down to the ground, and the rev counter's going right up into the red, and the engine is giving off funny smells, and it's getting really, really hot. So that's what the mind is doing. Now, if we could see that the mind is essentially in its last stages of trying to deny the enigma when kind of it's not doing so well, then we wouldn't be worried by the cover story, which is, oh, this bad thing is going to happen, or that bad thing is going to happen, or some undefined bad thing is about to happen or will happen, or maybe lots of undefined bad things, or maybe just a big global sense of bad things in general is hanging over my head. If I could see that the bad thing to which thought is referring is really that thought can no longer effectively deny the enigma, then that would be a profound liberation for me. Because what do I care if thought can no longer deny the enigma? That's actually a good thing. Thought is a complete pain in the hole. Why? It shouldn't be denying the enigma anyway. That's a completely stupid thing to do. Because if we deny the enigma, we deny life itself. We're denying everything interesting in life. It's a completely stupid thing to do. If we had any awareness at all, we wouldn't go along with thought at all in this regard. But we don't. So instead of thinking that the bad thing is that thought is doubting its ability to deny the enigma, we think the bad thing is something bad is going to happen to me. Some unspecified type of bad outcome is going to happen to me personally, but that's not it at all. That's thought's cover story. So that's point number one. That's the first point that we need to very clearly understand. What thought is that, or rather what runaway thought is at. That is what it's at. Every thought that comes along, whether it's an anxious thought, an everyday general kind of empty gossip type of thought, or if it's an obsessive kind of a thought, it's the same thing. The obsessive thought might be, I'm trying to get it right, I'm trying to get it right, I'm trying to get all the things lined up in the right way. That just means deny the enigma as well. Perfectionism means deny the enigma. All neurosis, without exception, is just another way of whitewashing or covering over the enigma, pretending there is no enigma. That's what neurosis is all about. And in the process, we make our worlds, our subjective, I make my subjective world smaller and smaller and smaller. Because by denying the enigma, I'm actually, as I've said, denying reality. And so I end up in a tiny little private world with no reality in it, just me and my reactions. So it's not, as I was saying, it's not great. The prognosis is not great for denying the enigma. It's not a road that takes us to a good destination. And the one thing that I haven't mentioned is depression. We could say, well, how does depression fit into that? How am I trying to deny the enigma in the case of clinical depression? And how we could answer that question is simply to say that depression is when we have succeeded in denying the enigma. So it's like success for the thinking mind, for the runaway thinking mind. It's done a complete job on, and it's covered everything in tiles. Everything is tiled over with regularities, regular thoughts, non-unique thoughts, just blah. What can you say about it? It's just no flavour to it. It's just more of the same, more of the same. And even though the product is crappy in the extreme, there's lots and lots of it, and there's plenty more where that came from, and it's an endless barrage of it. And the battle has been won, or so it seems, because there's no more trace or sound or whiff of the enigma at all. And in the first instance, when that happens, it's like, great, I can toddle around in an enigma-free world, completely relieved of the existential challenge, which is to actually relate to reality, I suppose you could say. I'm relieved of that challenge. Thank God for that. Isn't that great? So that's the triumph. But then my triumph is also my defeat, because by cleverly arranging things so that I no longer have to relate to reality, that's the good thing. The good thing is that I no longer have to relate to reality. And the curse that I didn't see coming, the absolutely black cloud which just covers everything and makes my whole life as if it's not worth living. I'm plunged into darkness. It is also because I'm not relating to reality. So I wanted not to relate to reality. I succeed in not relating to reality. Instead, I just relate to the mind-created world instead, which is crap. And at the very moment I succeed, I fail, because there's no more reality. It's just me and my thoughts, which is what thought wants, in as much as it can be said to want anything. But then when we do that, we've cut ourselves completely off from the light. And there's no purpose for living. Purpose is the wrong word. Not that there's a purpose for living, but there's no spirit of life left in it. There is no life left in it. It's a living death. We've become the undead. We've been cut off from our true spontaneous nature. We've been cut off from reality. Reality has been murdered, as Baudrillard says. And even though we could say, okay, and then you get depressed, but actually being depressed maybe comes later. We're kind of cruising for a while, living this kind of empty life, not knowing that it's empty. And then depression comes, if it comes. And that depression is actually awareness, because the depression is the pain of realizing that we've excluded everything real from the picture. So seeing this is a sign of health. It's our good sense coming back to us. It's like we know, not on an intellectual level, but we know on a whole level, the whole of us knows that we've lost something. And it's only if we know that we've lost it that we can ever get it back. So, as Baudrillard says, the thing about the murder of the real is that nobody witnesses it and nobody knows there has been a murder, and so we just carry on, and the crime is undetected. So we could say that that is the fate worse than death, and that when we become depressed, this is a healthy response to the situation that we're in, and the crime of the murder of the real has become detected. Okay, thanks for watching.